She'll never figure it out. You know how she is always so busy analyzing everyone else's money, she never looks at her own life. That was my best friend's voice. On my husband's phone. At 2:17 in the morning. I was standing outside my own bedroom door, bare feet on cold hardwood, back pressed flat against the hallway wall, one hand covering my mouth so they couldn't hear me breathing. My phone was already recording. I don't even remember picking it up. My body just knew what my mind wasn't ready to accept yet. 15 years. That's how long Tasha Monroe had been my best friend. She was standing next to me the night those numbers came up. She grabbed my hand. She cried. I thought those were tears of joy. They weren't. And Darnell, the man I had built 7 years of my life around, was on the other side of that door, laughing softly at something she said. Calm, comfortable, like this was just another Tuesday. What neither of them knew was that every single dollar, all $80,000, was already gone. Moved. Protected. 3 weeks before that night. But to understand how I got to that hallway, you need to understand who I was before it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments right now. I want to know who is staying up for this one with me. Hit subscribe if you have not yet, because trust me, you are going to want every single second of what comes next. In my line of work, we have a saying, every number tells a story. You just have to know where to look. Well, this is the story I should have read a long time ago. I have spent the last 12 years of my career looking at numbers that don't add up and finding the exact moment everything went wrong. That is what a financial analyst does. You sit down with a spreadsheet, a cup of black coffee, no sugar, no cream, never, and you find the pattern nobody else saw. You find the lie hiding inside the math. I was good at it. Really good. I had built my entire professional life around that skill. At 38 years old, I was a senior analyst at Meridian Capital Group, a mid-sized investment consulting firm on Peachtree Street in Buckhead, Atlanta. I had my own office with a glass door. I managed a portfolio of 11 corporate clients. I made $83,000 a year. I had not missed a single deadline in 6 years. My supervisor, a quiet Korean-American man named David Cho, once told me in my annual review, Danielle, you see problems before they exist. That's rare. I smiled and said thank you. I drove home feeling proud. What I did not tell David was that the one area of my life where I was completely catastrophically blind was the one that mattered most, my personal life. Our house was on Wyndham Court in Cascade Heights, a 2-story brick colonial with a wide front porch, dark shutters, and a magnolia tree in the yard that bloomed every April like clockwork. 2,200 square feet. 3 bedrooms. Hardwood floors throughout. I had picked out every detail. The slate gray walls in the living room. The open shelving in the kitchen. The blackout curtains in the bedroom that made Saturday mornings feel like the rest of the world didn't exist. I loved that house. I had loved building it into something that felt like mine. Every morning I woke up at 5:45. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen island for 20 minutes before anyone else was awake. I went over my day in my head. It was my ritual, my quiet, the one part of the day that was completely, undisputedly mine. Then I would hear Darnell moving around upstairs. I would feel that familiar warmth, or what I thought was warmth. Looking back now, I think it was something closer to habit. The comfort of a pattern you've stopped questioning. Darnell Antoine Okafor, 41 years old, 6 feet 1 inch, broad shoulders, a smile that could fill a room and make you forget what you were worried about. He was a regional sales manager for a furniture distribution company. Or at least that was the title on his LinkedIn profile. The reality was messier. He had been with 3 different companies in 7 years, always leaving for a better opportunity that somehow never quite materialized. There were gaps, quiet months where I covered everything. We agreed it was temporary. It was always temporary. But when things were good between us and there were times when they were genuinely good, Darnell could make me feel like the most seen woman in any room. He remembered small things. The name of my college professor who inspired me to go into finance. The exact sandwich I ordered when I was stressed. The way I needed 30 minutes alone after a hard day before I could talk to anyone. You're the most self-contained person I've ever met. and somehow you still let me in. I don't take that lightly, Danielle. I believed him. I believed him for 7 years. Now let me tell you about Tasha, Natasha Renee Monroe, 36 years old, 5 feet 4 inches. Natural hair, she rotated between 2 styles depending on her mood. A laugh so loud it made strangers turn around and smile. She owned a hair salon called Crown and Glory on Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard in the West End. A small space, 6 chairs, loyal clientele. She was always a little short on money, always talking about expanding. Always one bad month away from asking me for a loan she would pay back slowly and apologetically over the next 6 months. I never minded. That was just Tasha. We had been friends since we were 22 years old, thrown together as neighbors in a graduate housing complex at Georgia State. I was finishing my MBA. She was taking night classes in cosmetology while working days at a front desk downtown. We bonded over bad coffee. Worse television. The specific exhaustion of being young black women trying to build something in a city that moved fast and waited for no one. 15 years. Through breakups, promotions, a miscarriage she never told anyone else about, a funeral, 2 cross-country moves, and back again. Tasha was the person I called when I didn't have words yet. Before I even knew what I needed to say, she already knew. Or I thought she did. Every Friday after work, we had a ritual. We stopped at the BP station on Peachtree Road, the one with the surprisingly good hot bar. We bought scratchers and a quick pick lottery ticket. We sat in my car in the parking lot comparing them before driving our separate ways home. It sounds small. It was small. But it was ours. 15 minutes every Friday that existed outside of work and husbands and bills and everything else. That Friday in late September was no different. Except the jackpot had rolled over 4 times, $42 million on the Powerball, and a separate second prize drawing for $100,000 on the Georgia lottery. Tasha had suggested 2 weeks prior very casually that we try the Georgia game that week instead of our usual scratchers. She said she had a feeling. I thought nothing of it. I should have thought everything of it. Now, before I tell you what happened that Friday, let me tell you about 2 small moments I almost forgot. The first happened 6 weeks before the lottery. We were eating dinner. Darnell had made shrimp pasta, one of the 3 things he cooked well. Out of nowhere, he said very casually, "Babe, do you still keep that personal checking account at Citizens Bank? The one from before we got married?" I said yes. I told him I used it mostly for professional memberships and the occasional online purchase. He nodded. He forked some pasta. He said smart. Good to keep things organized. I thought he was being supportive. The second moment happened at my office. My colleague, Simone Carter, 34 years old project manager woman who notices everything and says exactly half of what she notices, stopped by my desk one afternoon. She said almost too casually, "Hey, random question. Has Darnell always been that curious about your work accounts?" He asked Marcus in accounting something about retirement vesting schedules at the holiday mixer last year. I thought it was strange, but I forgot to mention it. I told her it was probably just small talk. I told myself the same thing. Looking back now, those 2 moments were not small. They were not casual. They were the opening moves of a game that had been planned long before I knew we were playing. But that Friday evening, I did not know any of that yet. I was standing at a gas station counter with my best friend. I was holding a lottery ticket. I was watching the numbers come up on the screen one by one. And when the last number matched, Tasha grabbed both my hands. She screamed so loud the cashier stepped back. She was crying. I was crying. And somewhere in the back of my mind, that quiet analytical part that never fully goes offline, a small voice said something about this moment is off. I told that voice to be quiet. That was my first mistake. The night we won, Darnell made reservations at Bones Restaurant on Piedmont Road. White tablecloths, dim lighting, the kind of place where the steaks cost what some people make in a day. He ordered a bottle of Caymus Cabernet without looking at the price. He was generous like that when the energy was right. Expansive. Warm. The version of himself that made you remember why you chose him. We sat across from each other. He reached over the table. He held both my hands.
Baby, we did it.
Not you did it. I remember noticing that. Just for a half second. Then I let it go. Because the wine was good. The room was warm. I was happy. Genuinely happy. In the way you can only be happy when you don't yet know what's coming.
So what are we going to do with it?
He asked, leaning back, swirling his glass. He already had a list. I could see it in his eyes before he even opened his mouth. New truck. He had been talking about a Tahoe for 2 years. Something for his mother. Maybe a trip. And then almost as an aside. Almost too casual.
We should probably talk to a financial advisor. Get this structured right. I actually know a guy. Friend of a friend. Really solid. Works out of Dunwoody.
I am a financial analyst, I said. He laughed.
I know, babe. But this is different. This is our money. You shouldn't have to be working when you could be celebrating.
I smiled. I changed the subject. But I filed that moment away. Not in a suspicious place. Just in the place where things go when they don't quite fit. That was the first crack. So small I could barely see it. The next morning, Tasha came over for brunch. She brought pastries from West Egg Cafe. A bottle of champagne she definitely could not afford. An energy that was almost too high. Too bright. Too celebratory. In a way that, looking back, had an edge of performance to it. We sat at my kitchen island. She kept saying we too.
What are we going to do? Where are we going to travel? We have to be smart about this.
I loved her for it at the time. I thought she was just excited for me. The way a real friend gets excited. Like your win is her win. Because she loves you that much. I want to tell you something about Tasha that I need you to understand before everything else I tell you about her. Because what came later was so ugly that it would be easy to rewrite the whole 15 years as a lie. And I don't think it was entirely a lie. I think some of it was real. She was there when my mother passed. 2017. A Tuesday in February. Grady Memorial Hospital. Room 414. She drove 40 minutes in rush hour traffic to get there. She sat with me in that waiting room for 6 hours, without once looking at her phone. When the doctor came out, she was holding my hand before I even registered what he was saying. She did not leave until 3 in the morning. She slept on my couch for 2 nights after the funeral, because she said she did not want me to wake up alone in a quiet house. That was real. I know it was real. She was there when Darnell and I had our worst fight. The one in the summer of 2021. The one that nearly ended everything. The one about money and respect. And what it means when a man consistently earns less than his wife and handles it poorly. She sat across from me at a picnic table at Cascade Springs Nature Preserve.
Danielle, you are not his savings account. You are his partner. If he can't tell the difference, that's information.
She looked me dead in the eyes when she said it. I think about that now, and I feel sick. Because Tasha knew exactly what Darnell was. She knew before I fully admitted it to myself. And she used that knowledge not to protect me, but to position herself. But I am getting ahead of myself again. In the weeks after the lottery win, things at home started shifting. In ways I kept explaining away. Darnell began coming home later than usual. Not drastically late. Never late enough to demand a conversation. Just 30 minutes here. An hour there. He said it was work. He said they were restructuring his territory. He said it the way people say things when they have rehearsed them just enough to sound unrehearsed. He also started being nicer to me, which sounds like it should be a good thing. And that is exactly why it worked. He brought me coffee in the morning without being asked. He rubbed my shoulders when I was tense at my desk. He called me in the middle of the day just to say he was thinking about me. After years of me quietly noting his absences, his sudden presence felt like a gift. I accepted it. One evening, a Thursday, mid-October, the light already going gold and early outside the kitchen window. We were cleaning up after dinner.
Babe, be honest. Without me keeping you grounded, you'd have nobody. You're not exactly easy to love.
He said it with a small smile, like it was affectionate, like it was a joke between people who knew each other well enough to say hard things. I set down the dish I was drying. I looked at him. What does that mean? I asked.
Nothing bad.
he said, already moving toward the refrigerator.
I just mean you're intense. You're in your head a lot. Not everybody can handle that. I'm just saying I can. I do.
I told myself it was a compliment, wrapped in a clumsy delivery. I told myself he meant well, but that sentence stayed with me. The way a cold draft stays in a room long after the window is closed. You're not exactly easy to love. I turned it over in my mind for days, examining it, looking for the angle where it became okay. I am a financial analyst. I am trained to find the number that breaks a model. And that sentence broke something, quietly, in a place I was not ready to look at yet. The second Dao Hu Bat Thuong came from Tasha. She called me one Sunday afternoon. She asked completely out of nowhere,
Have you decided to use a lawyer to claim the lottery winnings, or are you just going in alone?
I said I had an appointment with a financial attorney the following week.
Oh, good. Is Darnell going with you?
Why would Darnell go with me? I asked. A beat of silence. Just half a second too long.
I just mean for support, girl. It's a big deal. You shouldn't have to deal with all that paperwork alone.
I let it go. I told myself she was being thoughtful. And then that same evening, I walked past the home office. I saw Darnell on his phone, standing by the window, speaking low. He saw me in the doorway. His posture changed. Just slightly, just enough.
Hey, let me call you back.
He said into the phone. He turned around smiling.
Just Marcus from work. Boring stuff.
I went to bed. I lay in the dark for a long time, staring at the ceiling, and that quiet analytical voice, the one I had been telling to be quiet for 3 weeks, said very clearly, very calmly, you already know. You just haven't let yourself know yet. Doi jai la, fan bon jan juok, shu li jung chuan theo quitrin. Teti es gyung guyen motram fan tram noi dungok. Equals narrator Danielle ***.
Bang han wat twai so mo dong ko mo dong trong kong giten han wat chi dung thang.
I want to tell you something about the way suspicion works when you love someone. It does not arrive all at once. It does not knock on the front door and announce itself. It seeps in, through the small gaps you have been spackling over for years without realizing it. Through the moments you explained away. Through the silences that lasted just a half second too long. And by the time you finally let yourself name it, it has already been living in your house for months. I named it on a Monday night in mid-October. Darnell had gone to bed early. He said he was tired. He kissed my forehead. He went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen with my laptop. I told myself I was catching up on work, but I was not catching up on work. I was sitting very still at my kitchen island, black coffee going cold beside me, listening to the silence of my own house, asking myself a question I had been avoiding for 3 weeks. What is actually happening here? I opened our joint checking account on my laptop, not because I suspected anything specific yet, just because numbers are where I go when I need to feel like I have some control over something. And that is when I saw it. 3 withdrawals over the past 4 weeks, each one between $300 and $400, all from ATMs I did not recognize. One on Campbellton Road, one in East Point, one in Decatur. Darnell's name on each transaction. Our joint account. I sat with that for a long time. 3 withdrawals in 4 weeks were not unusual for a household. People use cash. People have expenses. I knew that. But these were in neighborhoods that had no connection to Darnell's commute. His office in Sandy Springs, his gym in Buckhead, or any restaurant or store he had ever mentioned. And the timing. Every one of them fell on a weekday afternoon, between 2 and 4 in the evening, when he was supposedly at work. I did not confront him that night. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I lay beside him in the dark. I listened to him breathe. I thought I need more before I say anything, because if I say something now and I'm wrong, I will never hear the end of it. That instinct, the analyst's instinct, wait for a pattern before you call it a pattern, probably saved me, because what came next gave me far more than 3 ATM withdrawals. 2 days later, Simone called me at work. I could tell from her voice immediately that she had been holding something and had finally decided to put it down.
Danny, and she said, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you get defensive.
Okay, I said. I closed my office door.
I was at Perked Up on 17th Street yesterday, getting lunch, and I saw Darnell. He was at a corner table with a man I didn't recognize. Older, in a suit, had a leather portfolio open on the table between them. They were going through paperwork. I almost went over to say hi, but something about the way they were sitting, heads down, very focused, very quiet for a coffee shop, made me stop.
I said nothing.
I know you told me I was overthinking it before, and maybe I am. But Danny, the man had legal-sized documents. I could see the formatting from where I was standing. It looked like a contract of some kind.
I thanked her. I told her I would look into it. I hung up. I sat in my office for a full 4 minutes without moving, staring at the glass door, watching people walk past in the hallway outside. That evening, I did something I am not proud of, but do not regret. I went through Darnell's jacket pockets while he was in the shower, in the inside left pocket of his gray blazer, the one he wore to anything that required him to look professional. I found a business card, plain white, clean font. The name on it was Raymond Stills. Below the name Family and Marital Asset Law, Dunwoody, Georgia, a marital asset attorney. My husband had the business card of a marital asset attorney in his jacket pocket. I stood in our walk-in closet holding that card. I felt the floor tilt, not dramatically, not the way it does in movies, just a quiet, terrible shift, like the ground beneath a building that has been settling for years, finally deciding to move. I put the card back exactly where I found it. I walked to the bathroom. I knocked on the door. I said dinner was ready. He said he would be down in 5 minutes. I went downstairs. I served the food. We ate together. He told me about a difficult client. I nodded. I asked follow-up questions. I did not let a single thing show on my face. That was the first time I understood that I was capable of performing normalcy while my entire internal world was collapsing. After dinner, Darnell poured himself a bourbon. He settled on the couch to watch the game. I told him I had some work to finish. I went to the home office. I closed the door. I called Simone. The man you saw, I said. Did you happen to get a look at the documents? Any detail at all?
She was quiet for a moment. There was a header on the top page. I only saw it for a second. It looked like it said post-nuptial agreement. But Danny, I can't be 100% sure.
I sat very still. A post-nuptial agreement, drawn up after the lottery win. Using an attorney Darnell had presumably found and contacted on his own, without telling me, without discussing it. An agreement that if signed would legally restructure the financial terms of our marriage, potentially giving him claim to assets that were currently mine alone, including $80,000. I said goodnight to Simone. I sat in the dark office for a long time, and then I did what I should have done the moment I found that business card. I picked up my phone. I called the one person who could tell me exactly how exposed I was. Marcus Webb's office, said the receptionist. My name is Danielle Okafor, I said. My voice was very steady. I remember being surprised by that. I need to speak with Mr. Webb as soon as possible. It's regarding marital asset protection, and it is urgent. I hung up. I closed the office door. Through the wall, I could hear the low sound of the television, the murmur of the game, the clink of Darnell's glass. He had no idea I had just made the most important phone call of my life. But before I tell you what Marcus Webb told me, before I tell you about the night I finally got the confirmation I had been dreading, I need to tell you about a conversation I had with Tasha 3 days later, a conversation that on the surface was completely normal. That was what made it so devastating, because she looked me in the eye. She held my hand across a coffee shop table, and she told me everything was going to be fine. And I almost believed her. Doi jai la fanamjan juak su li jung chuan theo quitring. TTS gyung guyen mo trum fan trum noi dungok. Equals narrator Danielle ***.
Bang han wat thoi. Chidung thang kongi ten han wat. Sao mo dong ko mo dong trong jetoi u voice tools.
The coffee shop was Brood Awakening on Lee Street, a small place, exposed brick walls, mismatched chairs, the kind of neighborhood spot where nobody bothers you and the oat milk latte is genuinely good. Tasha and I had been coming here since it opened. The barista knew our orders without asking. I got there first. I chose a table in the back corner, away from the windows. I told myself it was because I wanted quiet. But the truth was I was already, without fully realizing it, positioning myself to watch the room. Tasha came in 7 minutes late, which was normal for her. She was wearing a burnt orange wrap dress. Her hair was freshly done, a sleek blowout, the kind she usually saved for client days or special occasions. I noticed it. I said nothing. She sat down. She reached across the table. She squeezed both my hands.
How are you doing, really?
She asked. Her eyes were soft, concerned, present in exactly the way a best friend should be. And that is what made it so hard. Because sitting across from her, feeling the warmth of her hands on mine, I genuinely could not reconcile the woman in front of me with the thing I was beginning to suspect. This was Tasha, my Tasha, the woman who had driven 40 minutes in rush hour to sit with me in a hospital waiting room, the woman who knew the name of my mother's favorite hymn and hummed it at the funeral without being asked. I told myself, you are being paranoid. You are a woman who finds problems in spreadsheets for a living. You are projecting. I'm okay, I said. Just a lot going on.
With the money stuff?
She asked. With everything, I said carefully. She nodded slowly.
Darnell seems stressed too. I ran into him last week.
She said it so easily, so smoothly, like it was nothing. Like running into my husband was the kind of thing that just happened. Where, I asked.
Oh, just, over in East Point. I was visiting a client. He seemed distracted. I didn't want to pry.
East Point. One of the ATM withdrawals was in East Point. I picked up my latte. I took a slow sip. I kept my face completely neutral. And behind my eyes, I was running calculations so fast it made my temples ache. She knew he was in East Point because she was there with him. Or she knew he was in East Point because he told her. Either way, she was not supposed to know. And the fact that she mentioned it so casually, not as a confession, not as a warning, but as a throwaway detail in the middle of a sentence, told me everything I needed to know about how confident she was that I would not catch it. She thought I was not paying attention. That was her mistake. We talked for another 40 minutes. She was warm and funny and present the entire time. She asked about my appointment with the financial attorney. I told her it went well and gave her nothing else. She said she was thinking about finally expanding Crown and Glory, maybe taking on a business partner. She laughed at herself for always dreaming bigger than her budget. I laughed too. I hugged her goodbye outside on the sidewalk. She held on for a second longer than usual.
I love you, Danny,
she said into my shoulder. I love you too, I said. I watched her walk to her car. I stood on the sidewalk until she turned the corner, and then I sat back down at that corner table alone. I opened my phone. I sent Marcus Webb a text. I need to move faster than we discussed. Call me when you can. That same week, the pressure at home shifted into something I can only describe as a coordinated campaign. It started with Beverly. Darnell's mother called me on a Wednesday afternoon, which was unusual. Beverly and I spoke maybe once a month. Short and cordial. The kind of relationship held together by mutual effort and genuine affection on my end. Though I was beginning to question what it had ever been on hers. Danielle, honey, she said. Her voice was warm, the way it always was. That particular southern warmth that can mean anything. I just wanted to check in on you both. Darnell tells me things have been a little tense since the lottery. Adjusting to a blessing can be just as hard as adjusting to a hardship, you know. I said we were fine. You work so hard for your family, she continued. And there it was. That specific phrasing. Soft as a pillow but firm underneath. You know, Danielle, a good wife, understands that a man needs to feel like a provider, especially when his wife is as accomplished as you are. It can be a delicate thing. I had not told Beverly anything was wrong. I had not told anyone anything was wrong, which meant Darnell had called his mother before calling me, which meant he was already building his narrative, already laying the foundation, already telling the people around him a version of this story in which I was the difficult one, the withholding one, the woman who won $80,000 and refused to share it with her husband. I appreciate your concern, Beverly, I said. We're handling things. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the parking garage at my office building. I gripped the steering wheel. I breathed. In, out, in, out. The kind of deliberate breathing you do when you are trying to keep something inside from breaking through. He was not just planning. He was organizing. He had a lawyer. He had Tasha. He had his mother. He was constructing a world in which he was reasonable and I was unreasonable. And he was doing it quietly and methodically. While coming home every evening and eating dinner at my table, that week Darnell began pushing harder about the financial advisor in Dunwoody. He brought it up 3 times in 5 days. Once over breakfast, once in a text message while I was at work, once while we were getting ready for bed. Each time slightly different framing. It would be smart to get a professional opinion. It would protect both of us. Don't you want to make sure we handle this correctly? The 3rd time I said, Darnell, I am the professional opinion. His jaw tightened, just slightly.
I know that, Danielle.
Full name again.
But you're also emotionally involved. It's different when it's your own money. You know that.
Our money, I said, testing him.
Right. Our money.
That night, I lay in the dark after he fell asleep. I thought about what Simone had said, what Beverly had said, what Tasha had almost said, what Darnell kept almost saying. I thought about that business card in his jacket pocket, Raymond Stills, Family and Marital Asset Law, Dunwoody, Georgia. I thought about 3 ATM withdrawals in neighborhoods that made no sense, and the analyst in me, the woman who had spent 12 years finding the lie inside the math. Lined up every data point in a row, and the model broke. Clearly, completely, irreversibly. I did not cry. I did not shake. I did not feel the dramatic devastation I might have expected. What I felt was something quieter, and in some ways more frightening than grief. I felt certain. The next morning I woke up at 5:45. I made my coffee. I sat at the kitchen island in the dark, and before anyone else in that house was awake, I transferred every cent of my lottery winnings, all $80,000, out of the joint account it had been sitting in, and into the private citizen's bank account that Darnell had once called smart and organized. He had no idea he had just told me exactly where to hide it. But even as I did it, even as I watched the transfer confirmation appear on my screen, I knew the money was only part of what I needed. I needed the truth, the whole truth, not the version I had assembled from ATM receipts, half sentences, and a business card, the real version. And so that night, before I went to bed, I set my phone to record. I placed it face down on my nightstand, volume off, screen dark. I closed my eyes. I slowed my breathing. I made myself as still as possible, and I waited. Dwai jai la, fan sao, ja juak, shuli jung qui trin, tts gyun guyen motram, fantram, noidung gok. Equals narrator Danielle ***.
Darnell.
Tasha. Simon chidung tang kongi ten hanvat sau moi dong komot dong trong jatoy UTTS. Numain ten points and kalpin kanine efforts and when au win down tegen nyen ten titenken kwamin ninan kamonsen komotsen found.
I did not sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of something that felt like sleep, the way a shallow puddle feels like water. Technically the same thing, but nothing you could survive on. Every small sound in the house pulled me back to the surface. The settling of the walls, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the soft rhythm of Darnell breathing beside me. So calm, so completely unbothered, and I lay there thinking about how a person could sleep that peacefully while carrying what he was carrying. Then at 2:17 in the morning, he stopped. Not the breathing, the stillness. There is a particular quality to the silence in a bed when the other person has opened their eyes. Something shifts in the air pressure. Something changes in the weight distribution of the mattress. And after 7 years, I knew it the way I knew the sound of my own heartbeat. He was awake. A minute passed. Then the mattress moved. Slowly, carefully, the way you move when you are trying not to be heard. He sat up. He stood. And I kept my breathing exactly as it was. Slow. Even the rhythm of someone deeply asleep. I listened to his footsteps cross the bedroom floor. I heard the soft click of the door as he pulled it open just enough to slip through. I heard it settle back into the frame behind him. I counted to 30. Then I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The recording was already running. I had started it before I pretended to fall asleep. I turned the screen brightness all the way down. I eased myself out of bed. I crossed the room in bare feet. I pressed my back flat against the wall beside the door. I could hear him in the hallway. Low voice. Deliberately low. The kind of low that takes effort. Not natural speech. A controlled performance of quietness. And then I heard her. Not in the hallway. On his phone. But the house was still enough. He was close enough to the door. I could make out every word. Not all of it. But enough. More than enough.
She still doesn't know about stills.
Tasha's voice. Unmistakable.
No. She thinks it's just a consultation. She has no idea what the agreement covers.
And the account? The Citizens Bank one?
A pause.
She mentioned it once. A few months back. Said she uses it for small stuff. It won't have much in it.
I pressed my hand over my mouth because I had moved every single dollar of that $80,000 into the Citizens Bank account 3 days prior. The account he had just dismissed as inconsequential. The account he thought was empty.
Good. Then once she signs, it's done. She won't have a legal leg to stand on.
She's not going to want to sign.
Then you make her want to.
A pause on her end.
Darnell, you've been doing this for 7 years. You know how to manage her.
Manage her. Those 2 words went through me like something cold and structural. Not a feeling. A rearrangement of something fundamental. Like a building that has been hit at its load-bearing wall. Manage her.
Honestly,
Darnell said. His voice dropped even lower. Low enough that I pressed closer to the door to hear.
I've been done with this marriage for 2 years. I was just waiting for the right time to leave. And $80,000 is a very right time.
The room did not spin. I did not feel my legs go weak. I did not cry. I felt something go very, very quiet inside me. Not the quiet of grief. The quiet of absolute clarity.
She's always been the smart one in the room.
He continued. I could hear the smile in it. That particular smile I had watched across dinner tables for 7 years. The one I had once found charming.
That's exactly why she never saw it coming. People like her. Too analytical. Not enough intuition.
And then Tasha laughed. Not a big laugh. Not cruel. Just easy. Comfortable. The laugh of someone who has been laughing at this particular joke for a long time. And that laugh, that specific easy 15 years of friendship laugh, was the thing that finally broke me open. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor of the hallway, back against the plaster, knees pulled up, phone still recording in my hand. For approximately 4 minutes, I sat there. I let myself feel the full weight of what I had just heard, not as an analyst, not as a strategist, just as a woman. 15 years, every birthday, every funeral, every 2 a.m. phone call when the world felt like too much, every secret I had ever trusted her with. I thought about the day she sat across from me at Cascade Springs. She told me I was not Darnell's savings account. I thought about the way she had said, "I love you" on the sidewalk outside Brood Awakening. Held on a second longer than usual. She had not been loving me. She had been managing me. Every lie he told me. Every evening he came home late. Every time he looked me in the eye at the dinner table and talked about our future. Every time Tasha asked, "How are you doing, really?" With those soft, concerned eyes. It had all been choreography. I do not know exactly when I stopped feeling and started thinking. There was no clear line. One moment, I was sitting on that floor, coming apart. And then somewhere in the space between one breath and the next, something shifted. That quiet place in my mind. The one that finds the broken number. the one that never fully goes offline, came back online, and it said, "You have everything you need." I had the recording. I had the transfer confirmation from 3 days prior. $80,000 moved before any legal agreement could touch it. I had the business card. I had Simone's account of the meeting at Perked Up. I had 3 ATM withdrawals. That placed Darnell in neighborhoods he had no business being in. And I had Marcus Webb. I stood up from the floor. I walked back to the bedroom door. I eased it open. I crossed the room. I got back into bed. I lay down. I closed my eyes. 30 seconds later, I heard Darnell come back in. The mattress dipped. He settled. His breathing slowed almost immediately back into the rhythm of sleep. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, and I made myself a promise. Quietly. Without words. The kind of promise that lives below language. In the place where decisions are actually made. I was not going to fall apart. I was not going to confront him in the morning with shaking hands, a cracking voice, and give him the chance to gaslight me one more time. I was not going to call Tasha. I was not going to scream everything I knew into the phone. I was not going to do any of the things that would tip my hand and give them time to adjust. I was going to be smarter than they thought I was. I was going to be exactly what Darnell said I was, the smart one in the room. And I was going to use every single thing they had underestimated about me to take back everything they had planned to steal. I called Simone at 6 a.m. She picked up on the second ring. "I need you," I said, "and I need you to not say a word to anyone." There was a brief silence.
Then Simone said, "Tell me where to start."
Simone was at my kitchen table by 7:30 that morning. She had stopped at the Waffle House on Cascade Road and brought back 2 coffees and an order of scattered, smothered hash browns that neither of us touched. She sat across from me and she listened. She did not interrupt. She did not make the face people make when they are hearing something shocking. The widened eyes, the sharp intake of breath, the hand over the mouth. She just listened steadily the way a person listens when they already suspected most of what they are being told and are simply waiting for the confirmation. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment.
"Okay, what do we do next?"
Not "I told you so." Not "I knew it." Not "how could he or how could she." Just "what do we do next?" And I cannot tell you how much those 4 words meant to me in that moment. Because what I desperately needed was not sympathy. Sympathy would have broken me open again. What I needed was someone willing to sit across from me and treat the situation as a problem that could be solved. Simone was that person. She was the one who had the name.
"Marcus Webb,"
she said, sliding her coffee to the side and leaning forward on her elbows.
"He handled my cousin's divorce 2 years ago. Nasty situation, business assets, real estate, the whole thing. He is the best marital asset attorney in Atlanta. If anyone can look at what you have and tell you exactly where you stand, it's him."
I had already called his office the night before. I told Simone that. She nodded, unsurprised.
"Good,"
she said.
"Because you need to move before Darnell figures out you know."
I met Marcus Webb that Thursday afternoon at his office on Marietta Street in downtown Atlanta. 12th floor corner suite, the kind of office that communicates competence without trying too hard, clean lines, good light, a bookshelf that was actually used. He was 53 years old, silver at the temples, with the unhurried manner of a man who had seen every variation of human betrayal and stopped being surprised by any of it. He listened to everything. I laid it out the way I would present findings to a client chronologically with documentation. The recording on my phone. The Citizens Bank transfer confirmation. The business card. Simone's account of the meeting at Perked Up. The ATM withdrawals. The postnuptial agreement that Darnell was trying to get me to sign through a lawyer I had never met. When I finished, Marcus Webb sat back in his chair and looked at me for a long moment.
This is actually simpler than you think, because they made one mistake.
He pulled up the Georgia State Marital Property Code on his screen and walked me through it carefully, the way you explain something to someone you respect enough not to condescend to. Under Georgia law, property acquired during a marriage is presumed to be marital property, unless it can be demonstrated that it was purchased exclusively with separate, non-commingled funds. The Citizens Bank account had been opened 3 years before the lottery win, had never been linked to the joint account, and had never received a single deposit from Darnell or from our shared finances.
That account is yours,
Marcus said.
legally unambiguously. And since the lottery ticket was purchased using a debit card linked to that account,
He looked at me.
that winnings belong to you alone.
I had not even thought about that detail. I had purchased the ticket on autopilot using the card in my wallet, the Citizens Bank card. The account Darnell had called small stuff. He dismissed it, I said.
Yes,
Marcus said.
that was their mistake.
What followed was the strangest 3 weeks of my life. Every morning I woke up knowing what I knew. Every evening I came home to a man who did not know that I knew. And every hour of every day in between, I had to perform a version of myself that was slightly worried, slightly preoccupied, slightly uncertain, but not suspicious, not prepared, not dangerous. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Not because I am a bad actor, but because Darnell in those 3 weeks was so aggressively, deliberately kind that there were moments I will not pretend otherwise when the doubt crept back in. When I would watch him laugh at something on television and think, what if I am wrong about all of this? What if the recording was taken out of context? What if Tasha was just venting? What if I am the paranoid, overanalytical woman he always said I was when he wanted me to feel small? The doubt never lasted more than a few minutes, but it was there. And I want to be honest about that because I think it is important. The doubt is not weakness. The doubt is what love does when it has not finished dying yet. And mine was not finished dying yet. One evening, a Wednesday, about 10 days into those 3 weeks, Darnell cooked dinner. Shrimp pasta again. The one he made when he wanted to remind me of something good. He lit the candles on the dining room table without being asked. He poured 2 glasses of wine. He put on the playlist we used to listen to on Sunday mornings when we had nowhere to be.
I miss us, babe. I feel like we've been so caught up in everything lately. Can we just be us tonight?
And I looked at him across the candlelight and I thought, 2 years. You have been done for 2 years. You were waiting for the right time to leave. $80,000 is a very right time. I picked up my wine glass. Of course, I said. I smiled at him. Tell me about your day. He talked for 40 minutes. I listened. I laughed in the right places. I touched his hand across the table once, and somewhere behind my eyes in that cold, quiet place that had taken over since the night in the hallway, I was thinking about the deposition timeline Marcus Webb had given me, about the financial records being assembled, about the package that would be ready by the end of the week. He had no idea. And Tasha, who called me twice that week with her warm, concerned voice asking how things were at home, whether Darnell and I had talked about the financial planning, yet whether I had found a good advisor, had no idea either. But Darnell kept pushing. At a Sunday dinner at Beverly's house in Morrow, a ranch house off Jonesboro Road, sweet potato pie and green beans, and the particular tension of a family gathering where everyone knows more than they are saying. Beverly pulled me aside in the kitchen. She put her hand on my arm the way she always did when she wanted something to sound like love. Danielle, she said softly, I raised Darnell to expect a certain kind of partnership in a marriage. A real partnership. Equal in every way. She squeezed my arm. Don't be the kind of woman who lets money come between her and her husband. That is not the woman I know you to be. I looked at her. Her eyes were steady, warm, completely rehearsed. You're right, Beverly, I said. Money should never come between a husband and wife. She patted my arm and went back to the stove. And I stood in that kitchen and I thought, she knows. She has known this whole time. And she chose him. That was the moment the last piece of doubt left me completely. Not with anger, not with grief, just with a final quiet closing like a door being shut on a room you will never go back into. I texted Marcus Webb from Beverly's bathroom. We're ready. File everything Monday. He responded in under a minute, already done. Papers served Thursday. I put my phone in my pocket. I walked back out to the dining room. I sat down at Beverly's table. I ate the sweet potato pie and I told her it was delicious. And I smiled at Darnell across the table and said nothing. Let him enjoy his last few days of feeling like he had won. Darnell got served on a Thursday morning. I was already at my desk on Peachtree Street when it happened. I had timed it deliberately. Marcus Webb's process server arrived at the house at 9:15 in the morning, exactly when Darnell would be home alone getting ready to leave for work. No audience. No dramatic scene in a public place. Just a man at the front door handing another man a legal envelope. And all the silence that comes after. He called me 11 minutes later. I watched his name light up my phone screen. I watched it ring. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it went to voicemail. I set the phone face down on my desk. I turned back to my spreadsheet. David Cho walked past my glass door. He nodded. He kept moving. The office hummed around me with its ordinary Friday energy. My hands were completely steady. He called again 20 minutes later. Then he sent a text.
Danielle, I need to talk to you. Please call me back. This is a mistake.
I read it once. I put the phone back down. Simone appeared in my doorway around 11 in the morning with 2 coffees. She set one on my desk. She looked at me. She raised an eyebrow. He called I said.
And
I let it ring. She nodded slowly. The way you nod when someone has finally done the thing you knew they were capable of all along. She closed the door behind her on the way out. That evening, I came home to find Darnell sitting at the kitchen table. The legal envelope was open in front of him. The papers spread out. He had the look of a man who had been sitting in that exact position for several hours. Tie loosened. Jacket thrown over the back of a chair. A glass of bourbon barely touched at his elbow. He had clearly rehearsed what he was going to say. I could see it in the way he straightened when I walked in. The adjustment of posture. The controlled reset of expression.
Beba, he said, let's talk about this.
I set my bag down on the counter. I took off my coat. I hung it on the hook by the back door. The hook I had installed myself 2 years into our marriage. Because he kept leaving his jacket on the kitchen chair, and it drove me quietly insane. Small things. The archaeology of a life together. Okay, I said. I sat down across from him.
This is a mistake, he said. Whatever you think is happening. Whatever someone has told you. It's not what it looks like. I was trying to protect us. The attorney, the agreement, that was about protecting both of us. You have to understand that.
I looked at him. At the face I had woken up next to for 7 years. At the eyes that had looked directly into mine. And lied so fluently for so long. Who told you I thought something was happening? I asked. A flicker, almost imperceptible.
Nobody. I adjust the timing, Danielle. You filed papers without saying a word to me. Without a single conversation.
You met with Raymond Stills 4 times without saying a word to me, I said. I found his card in your jacket pocket 6 weeks ago. The flicker again. Longer this time.
I can explain that, he said.
I know you can, I said. You're very good at explaining things. He leaned forward. Shifted strategy. The pivot from denial to appeal. Like watching a salesman realize one pitch is not working and reaching for another.
Danielle, look at me. 7 years. We have built something real. Whatever is broken between us, we can fix it. You don't have to blow everything up. Just talk to me.
And here's the thing I want you to understand about that moment. It was not easy. I want to be clear about that. Because I think women are often told that when you finally see the truth about someone, the love just evaporates, that it becomes simple, that you stop feeling anything except righteous clarity. That is not how it works. Sitting across that table from him, hearing him say 7 years in that voice, I felt the full weight of what was ending. Not because I wanted to stay, but because the grief of leaving is not only about the person you are leaving, it is about the version of your life you are letting go of. The future you had built in your imagination that was never going to be real. I felt that grief, all of it, in about 4 seconds. Then I put it somewhere safe to deal with later, and I came back to the table. Darnell, I said quietly, I'm going to need you to find somewhere else to stay tonight.
His jaw tightened. This is my house, too.
It is, I said, and that will be addressed in the proceedings. But tonight I need you to leave. You can take whatever you need for the next few days. He stared at me for a long moment, looking for the crack, looking for the place where I would soften, where the performance would slip, where the Danielle he had managed for 7 years would resurface and give him something to work with. He found nothing.
Fine, he said finally.
He stood up. His chair scraped against the hardwood.
Fine, but this is not over.
I know, I said. What happened next? I did not expect. 3 days after Darnell moved into a short-term rental in East Point, the neighborhood where the ATM withdrawals were. I noted it without satisfaction. Tasha called me. She did not know that I knew. Or perhaps she had begun to suspect something had shifted, because her voice on the phone was different. Slightly higher, slightly too careful.
Girl, she said, I just heard about you and Darnell. Are you okay? What happened?
I was sitting in my car outside a Publix on Metropolitan Parkway. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror for a moment. I'm okay, Tasha, I said. Just taking care of some things.
Do you want to talk? I can come over.
No, I said, simply, without heat. I'm good. A pause.
Danny, whatever is going on, I'm here for you. You know that?
I know, I said. I ended the call. I sat in the parking lot for a moment, looking at nothing. Then I pulled up Marcus Webb's number. I called.
The preliminary hearing is set, he told me. 2 weeks out. Fulton County. I want to walk you through what to expect, because there is something I need to prepare you for.
He paused.
I subpoenaed Beverly Okafor as a material witness.
I went still. His mother.
She made a mistake, Danielle. In your phone conversation with her, the one where she called to discuss the post-nuptial agreement, she referenced details she could only have known if she was informed about the plan before it was executed. That makes her a material witness, whether she wants to be or not. I spoke with her attorney this morning. Let's say she's not happy with her son right now.
I leaned back against my headrest. Why not? I asked.
Because, Marcus said, it appears that when Darnell outlined his plan to his mother, the full plan, including leaving the marriage and relocating, he mentioned that once the settlement was finalized, he intended to move to Charlotte with Tasha Monroe. New city, new start. He did not mention any ongoing financial support for Beverly.
The silence on my end lasted a long time. She didn't know he was leaving her behind, I said.
She thought she was helping her son secure his future, Marcus said. She did not realize she was not included in it.
I thought about Beverly in her kitchen in Morrow. Sweet potato pie. Rehearsed warmth. I raised Darnell to expect a certain kind of partnership. I thought about how she had chosen him over me, helped build the case against me, squeezed my arm in her kitchen, looked me in the eye and performed love. And then her own son had left her out of the exit plan entirely. Is she going to cooperate? I asked.
She has already agreed to testify, Marcus said. Fully.
I closed my eyes. Darnell had spent 7 years telling me I was not exactly easy to love. He had spent 2 years planning to leave. He had recruited his best ally, built his case, assembled his team. And then, in his arrogance, he had forgotten to take care of the one person who knew everything, his own mother. The trap was already set. All I had to do was walk into that courtroom and let it close. The morning of the hearing, I woke up at 5:45. Same as always. Same kitchen. Same black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Same kitchen island, same quiet. But everything else was different. The house felt different, lighter somehow, the way a room feels after you have moved out the furniture that never belonged there. I sat with my coffee and I watched the sun come up over the magnolia tree in the front yard. And I thought about the woman who had sat at this same island 3 weeks ago, back pressed against a hallway wall, bare feet on cold hardwood, hand over her mouth. She had come a long way. I dressed carefully that morning, not to impress, not to perform. I wore the navy wrap dress I kept for client presentations, the one that said, I am the most competent person in this room, and I already know it. Low heels. The pearl earrings my mother left me. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for exactly 10 seconds. And then I picked up my bag and I walked out the front door. Fulton County Superior Court on Pryor Street downtown was already busy at 8:30 in the morning. The hallways had that particular institutional energy, fluorescent light hard floors, the low murmur of people preparing for the worst moments of their lives with varying degrees of composure. Marcus Webb was waiting for me outside courtroom 7, a leather portfolio under his arm. His expression the same unhurried calm it always was.
You ready?
He asked.
Yes,
I said.
Beverly is already here.
He said quietly.
She came early. She has not spoken to Darnell.
I nodded. We went in. Darnell was already seated at the respondent's table when I walked through the door. He was wearing a charcoal suit I did not recognize new. I noted purchased recently. The kind of suit you buy when you want to look like someone who has already won. His attorney, a man named Gerald Fitch, who had the aggressive confidence of someone who charged $400 an hour and wanted everyone to know it, was leaning close, speaking low into his ear. Darnell looked up when I entered, and for just a moment, half a second less, something moved across his face. Not guilt, not remorse, something more like recalculation, a rapid, almost imperceptible reassessment. Then it was gone. And he was looking at me the way he had looked at me across dinner tables for 7 years. That particular expression that managed to be simultaneously dismissive and proprietary, like I was something he owned and was mildly irritated by. He leaned toward Gerald Fitch and said something. Fitch glanced at me, looked away. I sat down beside Marcus Webb and opened my notepad. Tasha was in the gallery, 3rd row, left side, wearing a cream blouse and her hair pulled back, composed, put together, the way she always was when she needed to project reliability. She did not look at me when I came in. She looked at the front of the room, at the judge's bench, with the expression of someone who has decided that if they do not make eye contact with anyone, the situation cannot fully reach them. Beverly sat in the 1st row of the gallery, on the opposite side. She was wearing church clothes, a burgundy skirt suit, white gloves folded in her lap. She looked straight ahead. When I passed her on the way to my seat, I did not stop. I did not look at her, but I felt her watching me. And in the watching, there was something I had not expected, something that felt almost like shame. The hearing opened with Gerald Fitch. He was good. I will give him that. He built his argument methodically and with genuine skill. The lottery winnings were acquired during the marriage. Both parties had contributed to the marital estate over 7 years. Georgia's equitable distribution standards applied, and his client was entitled to a fair share of all assets accumulated during the union. He cited 3 precedents. He used the word partnership 11 times. He was calm, organized, completely confident. Darnell sat beside him with his hands folded on the table, composed, still, and at one point he turned and looked directly at me across the room, with an expression that I can only describe as the face of a man who believes he has already won, and is simply waiting for the paperwork to confirm it.
You should have just signed the papers, Danielle. This is embarrassing for you.
I held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then I turned back to the front of the room. Marcus Webb stood up. He did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. I had noticed that about him from our first meeting. He had the particular authority of someone who does not need volume, because the substance does his work for him. He submitted the first exhibit, the citizen's bank account records, 3 years of statements, not a single transaction linked to joint marital funds, the debit card transaction for the lottery ticket purchase, time-stamped, highlighted in yellow. Gerald Fitch began his rebuttal. Marcus submitted the second exhibit before he finished his first sentence. The recording.
Your Honor, I would like to submit an audio recording made on the night of October 3rd in the marital residence by the petitioner. The recording captures a conversation between the respondent and a third party that is directly relevant to the question of intent and conspiracy in this matter.
The room went very still. Gerald Fitch was on his feet immediately. Objection, foundation, relevance, Marcus addressed each one with the efficiency of a man who had anticipated all of them before breakfast. The judge, a woman in her late 50s named the Honorable Patricia Drummond, who had the expression of someone who had heard every possible variation of human dishonesty and retained her patience through sheer professional discipline, listened, considered, and overruled. The recording played through the courtroom speakers. First Darnell's voice.
She's always been the smart one in the room. That's exactly why she never saw it coming. People like her too analytical, not enough intuition.
Then Tasha's laugh.
I've been done with this marriage for 2 years. I was just waiting for the right time to leave. And $80,000 is a very right time.
I did not look at Darnell while it played. I looked at the notepad in front of me, but I felt the room change, felt the specific quality of silence that descends when a group of people hear something that cannot be unheard. When it ended, I looked up. The color had left Darnell's face so completely and so rapidly that the change was almost clinical to observe, like watching something drain. He was gray, not pale, gray. The color of a man whose body has just understood something that his mind is still catching up to. His hands, which had been folded so composedly on the table 30 seconds ago, were no longer steady. I watched his right hand move to the edge of the table and grip it, not casually, the grip of a man whose knees had just decided they were no longer reliable. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Gerald Fitch put a hand on his arm, leaned close, speaking urgently. Darnell did not seem to hear him. He was looking at the speaker on the clerk's desk, as though the recording might somehow be rewound and unmade.
Your Honor, I would like to call Beverly Okafor to the stand.
And that was when Darnell turned and looked at his mother. Beverly stood up from the first row of the gallery, in her burgundy skirt suit and her white gloves, and she walked to the stand without looking at her son. She was 64 years old, and she had the posture of a woman who had made a decision and was going to carry it through on the strength of that decision alone, because if she let herself hesitate, she would not make it to the other side. She testified for 14 minutes. She confirmed that Tasha Monroe had contacted her 6 weeks prior to the hearing. She confirmed that she had been informed of the plan, the post-nuptial agreement, the asset restructuring, the intended divorce. She confirmed that she had been told Darnell planned to relocate to Charlotte after the settlement. And she confirmed, in a voice that was steady and flat and utterly without effect, that she had been told she would be provided for in this new arrangement. She had not been. When Marcus finished his examination and Gerald Fitch stood for cross, Beverly looked at Darnell's attorney with the expression of a woman who has already paid her price and has nothing left to lose. Fitch sat back down after 2 questions. Judge Drummond looked at the documents in front of her for a long moment. The room was so quiet I could hear the ventilation system in the ceiling.
The lottery winnings in question were purchased exclusively with funds from a separate non-commingled personal account belonging to the petitioner, predating the marriage by 3 years. Under Georgia Code, these winnings constitute separate property. The respondent's claim is denied.
The gavel came down. I heard Tasha make a sound in the gallery. Not words, just a short, compressed exhale, like someone who has been holding their breath for too long. I did not look at her. Marcus touched my arm.
It's done,
he said quietly. I nodded. I gathered my notepad. I capped my pen. I stood up. Darnell was still seated at the respondent's table. He had not moved since the gavel. His charcoal suit, the new one, the victory suit, looked wrong on him now. The way expensive things look wrong when the occasion they were purchased for has collapsed. His hands were flat on the table. His head was slightly down. He looked up when he heard me walking past.
Danielle.
His voice was different. The calibration was gone. What was left was something raw and unsteady, and for the first time in 7 years, genuinely unperformed.
I'm sorry. I made a mistake. You're not sorry, Darnell.
I said. I stopped. I looked at him directly, the way I had not allowed myself to do in weeks.
You're just sorry you got caught. There is a difference. And you know there is.
He opened his mouth.
You said I was too analytical and not intuitive enough. You were right about the analytical part. I analyzed every document, every transaction, every word on that recording. But you were wrong about the intuition, because 3 weeks ago my gut told me exactly what you were planning. And this time I listened.
I picked up my bag. I walked out of courtroom 7. I did not look back. In the hallway, I passed Beverly sitting on a bench outside the door. She looked up at me. Her white gloves were in her lap, and she was turning them over and over in her hands, the way people handle things when they need something to do with grief.
Danielle,
She said. I stopped. I looked at her for a moment. This woman who had squeezed my arm in her kitchen and performed love while handing her son the tools to dismantle my life.
take care of yourself, Beverly.
I said, and I kept walking. Behind me, through the closed door of courtroom 7, I heard Gerald Fitch's voice rising, then Darnell's, then silence. Outside on Pryor Street, the November air was cold and clean, and the sky was the particular shade of blue that Atlanta does in late fall. Deep, almost startling, like the city had decided to be beautiful without asking anyone's permission. I stood on the courthouse steps for a moment, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I took a full breath. 3 months after the hearing, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on Edgewood Avenue in Old 4th Ward. It was on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse building. Exposed brick, high ceilings, tall windows that faced east. They caught the morning light in a way that made the whole space glow for about 40 minutes every day, between 7 and 7:40 in the morning. I had measured that light the first time I viewed the apartment. I stood in the empty living room with my coffee. I watched it move across the floor. I thought this is the kind of light a person should wake up to. I signed the lease that afternoon. I did not take much from the house on Wyndham Court. My clothes, my books, the cast iron skillet I had bought myself when I got my first real job at 24, the framed photograph of my mother that lived on my nightstand, the things that were mine before any of it, before the house, before the marriage, before any of the 7 years I had given to a version of my life that turned out to be built on a foundation I had not been allowed to inspect. The magnolia tree I left behind. It was always more mine than his. But some things you leave not because you have to, but because you are ready to start over without them. The $80,000 did not go toward a new car. It did not go toward a vacation, or a wardrobe, or any of the things people assume money is for when they first get it. $20,000 went into a financial literacy fund I set up through my firm, a small, quiet initiative that provided free one-on-one financial counseling to women in the Atlanta metro area who were navigating divorce, job loss, or starting over after a significant life disruption. Marcus Webb helped me structure it properly. David Cho, my supervisor, offered to match the first $10,000 from a discretionary community fund the firm had never fully utilized. By the end of the first quarter, we had served 31 women. 31 women who sat across a desk from one of our counselors and learned maybe for the first time that their financial lives belonged to them, that the numbers were not intimidating. That understanding money was not a skill reserved for people with certain degrees or certain incomes. That knowledge was protection. I thought about that a lot. How differently things might have gone for me if I had not been a financial analyst, if I had not known to look at the account statements, if I had not understood what a post-nuptial agreement was the moment I saw those words on a legal document. Not everyone has that. And that asymmetry, the gap between what some women know and what others are never taught, felt like something worth spending money on. The rest I invested, quietly, carefully, the way I had always been good at doing for other people and was finally fully doing for myself. Simone and I have breakfast together every Saturday morning now. We go to a place called the Busy Bee Cafe on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Been there since 1947. The kind of institution that outlasts everything because the food is genuinely extraordinary and the coffee is strong and the booths are wide enough to spread out and stay as long as you need to. We order the same things every week. We talk about work and books and the specific ongoing comedy of being Black women navigating Atlanta in our late 30s. We laugh a lot. Not the kind of laugh that is performing happiness, but the kind that comes from two people who have seen each other clearly and chosen each other anyway. She never said I told you so. Not once. Not even obliquely. That is the rarest thing a person can do for you, and I do not take it lightly. I heard about Darnell the way you hear about people after the architecture of a shared life has been fully demolished. In fragments. Through mutual acquaintances. Information arriving unsolicited and landing with less impact than expected. His company let him go 6 weeks after the hearing. The story had circulated. The way stories do in a city that is large enough to feel anonymous, but small enough that professional communities overlap in ways people forget to account for. He was in a 1-bedroom rental in Marietta now, 30 miles from Buckhead, 30 miles from everything he had positioned himself to acquire. I did not feel satisfaction when I heard that. I want to be honest about that too. What I felt was something closer to the flat, quiet recognition of consequence. He had built a plan. The plan had failed. This was what failure looked like when you had been operating on borrowed time for 2 years and finally ran out of it. Tasha lost 7 clients in the 2 months after the hearing. Crown and Glory was still open. I drove past it once. Not intentionally, just the route I happened to be taking. The lights were on. There were cars outside. So she was surviving. Whether she and Darnell had actually gone anywhere together, whether Charlotte had ever materialized, whether the thing between them had outlasted its usefulness. I did not know. I did not look for that information. It was not mine to carry anymore. Beverly I had not spoken to since the courthouse hallway. I did not know what her relationship with her son looked like now on the other side of what she had done and what had been done to her in return. I hoped she was okay. Not warmly. Not with the fullness of the feeling I had once had for her, but I hoped she was okay. That is all I had left for her. I think it was honest. Some mornings I sit at my kitchen island in the new apartment. The east-facing windows. The light that arrives at 7 and stays until 7:40. And I think about that hallway. The cold hardwood under my bare feet. The hand over my mouth. The recording running on my phone. I think about the woman who stood there. Not afraid exactly, but so close to it that the difference barely mattered. The woman who had spent 12 years finding broken numbers in other people's spreadsheets and had somehow convinced herself that the most important ledger in her life did not need auditing. I think about what she did in the hours and days that followed. The transfer, the phone call, the 3 weeks of performance, the breakfast at Beverly's table where she ate sweet potato pie and smiled and said nothing, while the most important legal preparation of her life was already in motion. I am proud of her, of me. Not because everything worked out, though it did. Not because I won, though I did. But because at the moment when it would have been so much easier to fall apart, to confront and shout, and give everything away in a rush of justified emotion, I made a different choice. I chose to be patient. I chose to be precise. I chose to trust the part of myself that had been whispering the truth for weeks before I was ready to hear it. I chose to listen to my own instincts, that more than any of it is what I want to hold on to. My name is Danielle Marie Okafor. I am 38 years old. I am a senior financial analyst, a homeowner, a daughter, a friend. A real one now that I know what that word actually means. I'm a woman who spent too long believing that being easy to love meant making herself small. And I am a woman who finally, at 38, on a cold November morning on the steps of the Fulton County Superior Court, learned that the most important investment she had ever made was not in a portfolio or a property or a person. It was in herself. The money was never the prize. Knowing my own worth, completely, unconditionally, without needing a single person to confirm it, that is what I won. And nobody, not a husband, not a best friend, not a mother-in-law in a burgundy skirt suit with white gloves in her lap, can ever take that from me. Not now. Not ever. If this story hit you somewhere deep, I want you to sit with this for a moment. The people who underestimate you are counting on you to keep letting them. the moment you stop, the moment you decide that your instincts deserve the same respect you give everyone else's. That is the moment everything changes. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to choose between what you felt and what someone else was telling you to believe? I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, subscribe. Because there are more stories coming. And every one of them is for you. Let me take you back to a Friday afternoon in late September, the day everything changed, starting with a lottery ticket and a best friend who was never really a friend at all.